doing some things again.
For there.
Yeah, I know, that's what it feels like now.
Mhm.
It feels like a house now.
Yeah. Pick a number.
It's going, Ken.
Yeah.
Enjoy the sunshine.
Yeah, it's nice.
Waiting for some.
Don't even have a quorum right now.
Yeah. People are waiting for. Very fun stuff here.
Mary's here, I saw her. And the rest of our quorum.
Let's get going.
Sorry. They are now redistricting. Almost made it. Close.
Good evening, everybody. We'll call this meeting of the Delta Township Board to order. Will board members and guests please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Bowen,
Present.
trustee Brewer,
Present.
trustee Cascarilla,
Present.
trustee Mojica,
Here.
clerk Clark is present,
Here.
supervisor Fletcher, treasurer Fedewa.
Here.
Motion, ever, quorum, sorry. I've been doing motions in the other room.
We have the agenda in front of us. Any additions or deletions? Not a motion to approve would be in order.
So moved. I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there support?
Four.
There is support. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Public comments. Anybody here in the audience this evening would like to speak? Sure, come on up to the podium. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Alana Christ. My address is 6221 Delta River Drive, Lansing, Michigan 48906. I am here again, public comments concerning the egregious decision to sell out Hawk Meadow Parks Conservation and Nature mandate, manipulate public counsel, and to benefit a sole individual that has clear political ties to at least one or if not more board members of this current body. But I decided to use my comment right now to give a little perspective. Marcus gave a very good presentation about the Parks and Rec last week, and I think it's great reaching out to a bunch of groups for activities, sports, culture. What was absent from that are those who don't participate in those, but still value our lands and environmental quality, for things other than activities, culture, and sports, i.e. the non-monetized benefits of just having some nature to enjoy. So you can rent a shelter from the township. I asked Marcus, he didn't have the figures, but I used a baseline, let's say a 500 square foot shelter. You can rent that for $50 for 5 hours. Comes out to about $10 an hour for 5 hours, or $20 an hour for 5 hours, $20 an hour for 5 hours. This board decided that it was to the public's best interest, even though no one benefits from this except for one single individual, to rent out Hawk Meadow Park for a rate that is 98.5% lower than the valuation of a shelter, except it's not for 5 hours. It is for 5 years. And in addition, those who rent a shelter cannot damage the shelter, cannot poison the shelter, and cannot set up a permanent industrial or commercial operation. But yet for 98.5% lower valuation than a shelter, this board decided to allow a single individual whose farm, by the way, does not benefit the tax revenue because the address is outside the township, to not only damage soil, but to spray toxins, kill wildlife, and set up a permanent industrial operation for 30 cents an hour over 5 years. That is perspective. To conclude my comments for this time, because I will put another comment out at the end, and it will have to do with the ground thawing. I think it is in this board's best interest to start answering some of the vital questions of how those who voted in support of A, using public counsel to change the deed, and B, subsequently to not even recognize any sort of notion of shortening the lease by stonewalling very critical and intelligent comments made by some other fellow board members to try to solicit debate. They were just stonewalled to the point that I can almost hear cartoon sounds of blinking eyes, which either leads me to conclude one of two things. And this is my opportunity that I'm giving to any board member to say otherwise, of which one board member has reached out to me and helped alleviate some of my concern. And that is either board members who supported this notion are incompetent or they are intent. Intent meaning they were intent to let this policy go through, to sell out our public lands that were set aside for conservation. Thank you. Enjoy your meeting.
Any other public comment? See none coming forward, we'll continue down with our agenda, and next up we have the consent agenda. What's the pleasure of the board on that item?
Sure.
Yeah, Beth, it's fine.
I move that the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
And supported by Rhonda. Question before us now is approval of the consent agenda as presented. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Bowen,
Yes.
trustee Brewer,
Yes.
trustee Cascarella,
Yes.
trustee Mohica,
Yes.
treasurer Fedora,
Yes.
clerk Parker, yes, supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we move down to new items of business. First up is number 5, the request for purchase approval of the self-contained breathing apparatus. And it is recommended that we approve the bid for $399,114.75. What's the pleasure of the board on this item? Rhonda.
I move that the Delta Township Board direct the township manager to waive the formal bidding process and join Muskegon Charter Township Fire Department RFP process to obtain favorable pricing and purchase self-contained breathing apparatus from Phoenix Safety Outfitters for a total cost of $399,114.75, of which $58,374.54 will be reimbursed to Delta Township from the Looking Glass Regional Fire Authority.
Is there support?
Support.
There is support. Any discussion? See none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Item number 6, Fire Department Memorandum of Understanding for Retention and Recruitment, and the manager's office recommends that we enter this agreement with the Firefighters Union, Local 2846. What's the pleasure of the board of this? Andrea, then.
I move that the Delta Township Board authorize the township manager to enter into the attached memorandum of understanding with the Delta Township Professional Firefighters Union, IAFF Local 2846. Sorry, I'm fogging up there. For retention and recruitment efforts in the Delta Township Fire Department.
Support.
Yep, it's been moved by Andrea, supported by Dennis. Any discussion? See none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Managers report.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and thank you for the support on the memorandum of understanding. I know that fire department appreciates it. It was really a collaborative effort. And I know President Steve Funk wanted to pass along his thoughts on thank you as well for the collaboration between the township and the firefighters. A couple items. As I've mentioned in the past meetings, our wastewater bids are due on Thursday, so it's a big day for the township. So our fingers are crossed, so we get quite a few bids and they come in with good bids. I mentioned in the memo, we did submit a grant for the first responder Michigan Treasury grant. They did receive quite a bit of applications. So I'm not holding out a ton of hope. Had close to 500 applications for that, for $5 million total in that program. Our auditors were here last week. They completed the audit, so they'll be back in April or so to present on the findings, but everything went pretty smoothly. So thank you to Courtney and her crew in accounting, and really all of our directors and township employees, because a lot of the hard work they do throughout the year and the detail that we put in the memos and all that stuff leads to a quicker, more efficient audit. So I appreciate everybody's work on that. We did have a full-time mechanical inspector who started today, first day. So that will, his name is Adam Detweiler. So that will take some pressure off of our current plumbing and mechanical inspector who's been doing two trades for quite a while. And with everything that we have going on and coming up, that's going to be a major need. So that's going to suit our building department and our response times and inspections very well and plan review. So that will definitely help.
Brian, will they
Yes.
continue to each do inspections in both of those areas?
Well,
Are you gonna split them out?
Our new employee is only a mechanical
Okay.
licensed, but Nate
fine.
Foltz, who has mechanical and plumbing, will continue to do some in
Okay.
both. It just gives us some more backup there, but it helps relieve his burden. So unfortunately, this afternoon, we did have an ambulance involved in an accident today. So some quite a bit of damage to the ambulance, as I understand, but no staff members injured. So we'll find out more about that. I do have a meeting with LEAP on Wednesday to learn more about our funds from MEDC in regards to our GM infrastructure grant. So those funds will flow through LEAP. As will the Board of Water and Lights. So it's a new program, so we're just learning more details. We have already had one or two meetings with General Motors in terms of their site plan layout. They've just brought on their professional engineers and architects, Ghaffari and Associates, but they built these plans before, so they're quite a bit down the road. So we're getting more information and trying to meet weekly or so with them.
From you. If
Yes.
I may just add regarding that, you may be aware, but in case you're not, the way that was structured with the SOAR program, the legislature has to transfer those funds for each project that may be approved by the Strategic Fund Board. And the Appropriations Committee has that transfer request from the governor up before them this week.
Okay.
Yeah, to that point, how many projects do they expect the legislature to have to approve? Is it numerous or is it just a handful?
It just is based on the funding, so they put an initial 1 billion into that pot
Right.
for projects. Right now, the only one that's been approved is GM. That was, I think total 600 and some. Or no, maybe they put 1.5 billion, but regardless, they haven't used all that money. There's some money left. They're talking, the governor's requested another appropriation in there, so it's an ongoing. There's no-
So these are very large projects.
Yeah,
They
these are
aren't
the
like, they're not
transformational.
micromanaging the grant that we're gonna get from.
It's just for SOAR, but those funds, they have to approve the transfer of the funds.
Got it. All right.
After the MED, the Strategic Fund Board approves the project.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Okay.
but that is this week, just in case you weren't aware.
I appreciate that. I was not aware of that, but yeah, of course, we've been kind of pushing for as much flexibility with those funds just because our infrastructure projects are still a little bit unknown at this time. We're still, dialing those in to optimize those. And a lot of it depends on, the placement of their plant and some of those different things and so where we bring the water in and that type of thing. So I will keep you updated on that. Just one other thing, or a couple of things on the state budget. I had a Michigan Municipal League Municipal Finance Committee meeting last week. For those of you who know him, Chris Hackbarth is leaving Michigan Municipal League. So he's been the main municipal lobbyist for quite some time. So it's quite a loss for the Municipal League. But anyways, just a couple of highlights. I know from the proposed state budget, they have a 10% increase in statutory revenue sharing. That's not a ton of money for us, probably about $12,000. Hoping to have the budget done by July 4th. We're keeping our eye on some of the funds, especially the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that they expect to kind of relinquish a lot of those at the end of the first quarter, or at least plans and how that will be used. I think there's a supplemental bill with a lot of sewer funds in it. So that's kind of our particular attention. Also, some of the formula dollars that will go to our Metropolitan Transportation Organization, particularly for bridge replacement, relating to our discussion last week on the Webster Bridge. So there's a lot going on with that. A couple of things of interest. They did have a hearing on the disabled veterans tax exemption, property tax exemption. So as you know, that costs us roughly $50,000 a year. All the taxing jurisdictions closer to 300,000 in Delta. So the state is, it looks like it's gaining traction to turn that into more of an income tax credit. So we would still process them here, but would not be paid for out of property tax funds. It would be a state income tax credit, which I know the Municipal League has pushed for since they enabled that, but that would be a benefit to the township. So, I think that is about all I have tonight, Mr. Supervisor, but.
Thanks. Questions for Brian Dennis?
Yeah, hey, Brian, Eric, through Courtney, if we've gotten clarification on the American Rescue Plan guidelines to the township yet? Are we still waiting on that?
You mean just for the funds that were given to the township?
Yeah,
Yes, we do have guidelines on that.
okay. We're gonna get a presentation from staff on that, and when you make recommendations on how it should be distributed or used? Or are we gonna have a discussion about it?
We have used some of those, for instance, for the fire truck or the aerial fire apparatus. Some were included in the memorandum of understanding for the firefighters today. So Courtney may be able to explain it better, but I guess the guidelines is they really took most of the guidelines off for us. Anyone under, I think it's 10 million.
Right.
So essentially we can almost use those as general funds. So the township received about $3.3 million.
Correct.
Some of the American Rescue Plan funds that went to the state of Michigan still remain unspent. So those are ones that we've been really looking at to access either for infrastructure or some other programs.
But we've allocated that whole 3.3 million with those two projects. That's what I'm asking.
We have not.
Okay,
No.
how much is left that we haven't allocated so far?
Boy, probably 2.5.
Yeah, we probably allocated almost $1 million.
Okay,
Between, well, the ambulances are allocated yet, not officially allocated, because we haven't worked. We have earmarked a couple of ambulances, so including that, probably about.
so a little less than a third. Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Brian? Seeing none? Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. Moved on to the committee of the whole discussion items this evening, and we have on the agenda the engineering annual report. Ernie, how are you this evening?
Overworked.
Good, thank you, Supervisor, board members, glad to be here. If you don't mind, I'm gonna take this off, otherwise I'll probably overheat.
And then how you feel?
Alana's gonna run the slides for me here. Today is actually Engineers Week, the beginning of Engineers Week, so I guess if you were dreading this presentation, you're kind of stuck with it.
Congratulations.
2021 for our department was a busy year. And you'll see primarily driven by utility projects and private development, large private development projects. It could have even been busier, but we had a really tough bidding environment that delayed some projects, which just kind of pushes things down the road a little bit. So, like I said, utilities was a heavy focus, water, sanitary sewer, wastewater treatment. Obviously, Brian mentioned we're taking bids on Thursday for the phase 1 of wastewater treatment plant, which is now the wastewater resource recovery facility. I'm still getting used to that. Our department provided overall project management for the $90 million project, which is both phases. Completed the design engineering efforts. This 30, 60, 90% reviews are literally hundreds of staff hours, both my time, Rick's crew. But that's where kind of all the oversight of that project occurs, is in those efforts. So glad to be on the downhill side of that. We've also made it through some of the approvals with site plan approval, Eagle Part 41 permits, and we've hit all the hurdles that we've had to with the SRF funding program. So big day on Thursday, and hopefully we'll get good news and be able to roll into construction and see that project move forward here in the spring. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a quick question just regarding this project? I know costs have increased substantially for materials, labor costs, all of that. And so we've seen the cost of the project change. And I think this number is different from the last one I saw. Is that all just another reflection of those continued escalating costs around labor and materials? Or does any of that have, and I guess I was just wondering if any of that had to do with, the announcement with the battery plant and then any additional needs that might be, have been added,
Sure.
To that project, I guess, with those developments.
So the 90 million we've had kind of targeted for a while now. We had a major not ratchet up at about the 30% design level due to kind of looking at the inflationary market. There are no additional costs built into the project right now for the GM battery plant. This project included a 2 million gallon per day flow increase on an average basis, of which, the GM plant will take a portion of that. So we're not building in additional cost at this point for that project. And this project, really the numbers here, 90 million reflects, the last estimate that was done. And so we'll learn on Thursday where the market's gone. hopefully we have, like Brian said, a lot of competitive bids that will help stabilize that, but we'll know more Thursday and we'll react to the news we get.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Or Ernie, if I could jump in, just to clarify, like on the GM, we did receive some of our funds will help offset some of the capacity, because GM coming in being such a large user, we had to add to the plant capacity anyways, but GM basically swallows up, 25-30% of that immediately. So that's why it was, therein lies the reason for the funds, roughly $6 million towards the plant.
Okay, thank you.
So on the sanitary sewer side, busy year also, always continuing to refine and look at different scenarios within our sewer modeling. And Brian mentioned before, that was a very useful tool in understanding our system, where we're at capacity wise. And so we're always kind of looking at that year to year, looking at different portions of the system. This year we looked at we did an analysis of the August rain event when we had a lot of flooding in the township and in the Michigan Avenue interceptor sewer. So we learned essentially that pipe successfully carried the level of flow which Eagle says it has to carry. And so, but the rain event just greatly exceeded that rain event that we have to design to. So kind of good news, bad news, the pipe performed the way it should. Bad news is we just got more water than we could possibly design around. So it continues to be a good tool, and we'll continue to use that tool going forward. The Carrier Creek interceptor sewer repair, this is the one near the St. Joe, just north of St. Joe near our cemetery. We completed the design, began an easement acquisition process. I think you're all aware we've had some struggles with that. We're hoping to get that resolved, and this project we need to get it built this summer. It kind of takes on another level of urgency with the battery plant coming in. And then finally, the sanitary lift station for the Willow lift station area west of the freeway. A couple of years ago, we did a short-term project to buy some time out there and gain another 200 connections. Well, we've used probably 80 of those. And so we're down to about 120. So you've authorized us, and we've been proceeding with some preliminary design efforts. A few weeks ago, we were in front of you and kind of presented some site options, and we're moving forward with that just to have it ready to go when we need to pull the trigger on that. Next.
Just a question on the sewer. I know a few years ago or a couple of years ago, we were talking about a lot of non-flushable items sort of backing up some of the sewers. Is that better now? Do you see better?
No, I wouldn't say it's better. Rick just sent me an article on that today out of Macomb Township down by Detroit area. It remains, a nation worldwide problem with those products. I would say what's changed for us is Rick's implementation of the kind of pre-screening device ahead of the digester, and I believe they're getting a lot of that out of there. So it's been a good investment from what I can tell, and it'll be something that we keep in the new iteration of the plan to try to protect those assets from getting clogged up. It seems like a losing battle at this point until maybe some legislation occurs that either prevents those from being marketed as flushable, or the market changes in terms of people wanting to use those products.
Great, thank you.
The water side, we've wrapped up some work at the Christ Road storage tank that was related to our southern connection to the Board of Water and Light and our water reliability study. So it was nice to get that project kind of wrapped up. And then subsequent to that, we obtained the approval from Eagle to plug our wells. And so we've actually got a bid package out right now. Bid's due in a few weeks to get those wells physically plugged, closed off from any source of contamination. And then we can take our time to figure out what to do with the sites and the buildings, but we wanted to get them filled up and safely plugged. So that's out for bid. We did retain a consultant for easement acquisition for the St. Joe Water Main and Pathway project, and they're working along on those. And we completed an in-house design for a Saginaw water main crossing at Kreitz Road. It turned out to be a pretty complex project, one of our tougher ones that we've designed. And when we put it out to bid, we only got one bid and it came in very high. And so that's one of these that's been shelved. We'll be kind of strategizing with the utilities department to see how that fits into what else we might be doing on Saginaw corridor in the coming years. So we'll, the good thing is we've made it far enough down the list of those crossings that we think we got the worst of the worst in terms of something breaking. Of course, you never know, but this is one that I think if we let it sit for a year or two until things stabilize, that, I think we're gonna have to roll the dice on this one. So next slide, please. Along the non-motorized front, not a lot of heavy duty lifting on our part, but a lot of collaboration with the road commission that resulted in a couple of really nice projects with Mount Hope Highway being widened and to add bike lanes. Received $240,000 in federal grant funding, and then the Michigan Avenue Road Diet, where we converted a 4-lane section to a 3-lane section with bike lanes on each side. And so, this collaboration went really well. I was happy with how we were able to work with the road commission, and we have to really think ahead to do those projects were listed on the 2020 to 2023 transportation improvement program list. So, those are way back in 2019 when we were able to think ahead, get those on the list, coordinate with the road commission and make those happen. So a little under 3 miles of new bike lanes added to our inventory because of those two projects, and new road surfaces to boot. So the east-west pathway repair, this is just east of the Carrier Creek Bridge. It's been a problematic area for quite a while, due to some washout and drainage issues. Went through kind of a extended drainage design period to get that design the way we wanted it. Bids came in high. We were able to value engineer to a point with our contractor to get the cost to a point where it made sense to move forward, and then couldn't get materials to do the project last summer. So that's on tap to, as soon as the weather cooperates, probably June or July, I would think we'd be getting them mobilized and hopefully getting that pathway repaired. And then at the fall of last year, speaking of the transportation improvement plan list, the next 3-year cycle or 4-year cycle, if you will, 2023 to 2026, that process went through the CARTS program committee at Tri-County. We worked with the road commission again to submit projects on our behalf, and had a carryover project of the Nixon Road bike lanes to kind of the next piece out there by Mount Hope Park. Received $162,000 in federal grants, and then a pathway on Mall Drive, Ivan, and Elmwood, which would connect the spur from the east-west pathway next to the mall all the way down to the pathway by the Waverly High School. So,
Ernie, what would be our match on that?
I believe those are 20% match. It's 80-20, I believe. So 635 is the 80.
Is their portion is 80? Then we have
Yep.
20. Okay.
Yep.
On the Nixon Road bike lanes, can you remind me what the kind of parameters are? for
So,
the bike lanes?
Yep, that's north of, basically between St. Joe and Mount Hope.
Okay,
So right past the Mount Hope or the Nixon entrance to the park.
okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. So under roads, remembering that we're not a road agency, we still do get involved in quite a bit of collaboration, coordination with our partners of the road commission. And again, this kind of ties back into our complete streets or ordinance where we're looking at opportunities to add non-motorized and other pedestrian facilities when the chance arises as these roads are getting resurfaced. So again, in Mount Hope Highway received almost $1 million in federal grant funding, 435,000 in Michigan Avenue. So a couple major resurfacing projects, which again incorporated the non-motorized. We also, probably a smaller thing that we got involved with, we coordinated some Opticom device installations for new traffic signals at Waverly and the off ramps at 496 and on Kreitz Road at the auto owners. And what the Opticom devices are, if you don't know, they're the devices that allow our emergency vehicles to control the light as they're approaching an intersection. And so typically they don't get put in by the road commissioner or MDOT. And so we have to make sure that those get added, and quite often we'll pay the cost, but it's paramount for our first responders as they're moving through the township to have those devices installed. And so we keep an eye out when there's a new signal installation. Next slide, please.
Ernie, just speaking with the road commission, tonight is their township meeting, and I did share my unhappiness that they again made it on a common township board meeting night. But did you have a chance to share with Blair? We talked about that, and I didn't know if you've actually met with him since we had that conversation a meeting or two ago.
I have not had a chance to talk
I just
to
want
him
to keep
yet.
it on your radar.
Yeah, I will.
I shared my displeasure, but I'd like it to come from someone besides me.
Noted. Sidewalks, we continued our annual maintenance project for both the concrete jacking and the replacement work to the tune of almost $100,000. Again, kind of taking care of dangerous areas, trip hazards, and trying to get to as many ADA ramps as we can. And again, I think I mentioned there's hundreds and hundreds of ADA ramps, and we can only get to so many, but we try to take care of an intersection that is in need and is getting use. And so we're, I think, successful again, where we've kind of not made much ground is on the new sidewalk construction in the last 2 years. We've had some projects delayed by COVID and by lack of easement acquisition, and frankly, a little bit of lack of time on my part to pull this off. So we're, if something had to give last year, I think it was on the new sidewalk construction, but we're trying to stay up on our sidewalk maintenance program.
Ernie, I got a question for you. You may know this. The ADA sidewalk where it crosses the road, you show some here. But when you have two of them coming together, like on a four corner, I'm seeing that there's actually a rise in the curb, a little triangular wedge between the two. And you just talked about a trip hazard. And those things are a trip hazard. And I don't know why they're there. They're about an arc about like that, and the curb is that high. And is that required, or, can't we just, when we put these in, just make it the same level?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And then sometimes the geometry of that curve, the wedge gets a little small. It's usually best to have them separated so that they're directional, so that if someone that's maybe vision impaired or has trouble navigating knows that they're on the ramp and it's heading across the street in this direction versus 90 degrees the other direction. It also, when you have a really wide, long radius, then you end up putting all these plates, and those plates are actually pretty expensive. The one with the little dimples on them, and they get to be pretty expensive. So we usually try to keep them separate. You'll see some once in a while where it's a tight enough radius that we'll do a kind of a sweep like you're talking about. But
Well, I've seen some that aren't, and I can understand a wide arc, is what you're saying. And I can understand someone who's visually impaired, but it's also a trip hazard for people who may not be visually impaired, but uncoordinated. And it's certainly a hazard for bicyclists. I can tell you that. So, it's just a common sense type thing. I didn't know if it's regulated, that if it's like a minimum of like even a foot it has to go in? Or is that sort of a discretionary thing that we can do on the township?
It's a little, there, nothing's black and white in
Yeah,
the
okay.
regulations. I mean, it's open to a lot of interpretation. So we can note that and I can take a look at that. You know,
I mean-
I'm not saying we can change each and every one, but it's something to think about. And it's something we do think about as we're getting it laid out with our contractor. So
Yeah, okay, thank you.
next slide, please. Parks projects, unfortunately, we're not able to build anything last summer due to high pricing received. We did get through the design process on the pathway and additional ball fields at Mount Hope Park. And those are actually out to bid right now for rebid. So hopefully we'll be able to be a little more successful this go around and possibly build one or both of those later this year. Next slide, please. Private development, very busy year in private development, over 45 commercial site plans reviewed. We saw construction of a mile of new sanitary sewer main and 2.3 miles of new water main construction. We had several, as you know, several large projects, Delta Crossing, Amazon, Echo Valley subdivision. All these larger ones take a pretty fair amount of planning on our end in terms of extending the water and sewer and what impacts they'll have on our systems. So those big ones tend to take up quite a bit of time. We did see inspection, construction go through on Amazon, the Redwood housing development, 4800 South Canal commercial buildings, and the Delta Crossings phase 1 and 2. Due to our workload, we did begin using some consultant help, local consultant down the road, Bergman, to assist us with some of those inspections because we just could not keep up, and that's worked out really well, and it'll probably something that I'll need to rely on going forward to be able to cover all these sites. And then late in the year, just before the holidays, we began hearing word of the GM Ultium battery project and really got involved probably between just before Thanksgiving on looking at conceptually what it was going to take to serve those. And we're still grinding through that, as Brian mentioned, but we did not put together quite a bit of effort and time into putting in cost estimates, which fed into the state for some of these dollars that we talk about, the 33 million in infrastructure funding from the state to help pull that project off. Next slide, please. Under facilities, also had quite a bit going on with facilities. Early in the year, we wrapped up the building evaluation of all our major facilities, presented the board with kind of our findings on that, and got to, I think, consensus to move forward with looking closer at the sheriff's substation. And after that, we were assisted with the contractor selection and in the phase 1 study, which we just presented to you recently. Was it last week? Yeah, last week, I guess. So that project's moving along well, and then we also got Fire Station 1 re-roofed last summer. Next slide. Other kind of in the other category, probably the main one is our MS4 permit or stormwater management program. This is something that we have to keep up on with Eagle, and they came in and did a desk audit that we got through last year. So glad to get that behind us. And it's one of those things that's important to, we want to protect our stormwater and our facilities, but some of the hoops we have to jump through with Eagle, it's a little bit time consuming and something it's not kind of foremost in our day to day. And so we have to make sure we make time to get it done and stay in alignment with our permit requirements. So that wraps up 2021 and looking ahead into 22, because I'd like to do that because a lot of our efforts carry over year to year, and 1 year impacts the next in terms of some of our longer range planning efforts. So obviously the wastewater treatment plant or water resource recovery facility bids are opening on Thursday. We'll get hopefully through that SRF loan process, but right now, we're looking at, 2.5 years of construction oversight and administration. So even though the heavy lifting on design and bidding is done, there's gonna be a lot of oversight, and we'll have our consultants, being primary on that, but having kind of been in construction my whole career, it takes a lot of time, and you don't have a lot of, when something comes up, some issue comes up during construction, you have to get right on it. You can't, it's not something that can wait, because you got crews and contractors waiting in the field for responses. So that'll, I'd lie to you if I knew exactly what that was going to entail on this project. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be an awesome experience, but it is going to take up some time. And we'll work hard to try to keep you in the loop and keep our public in the loop on what's going on that project. And at some point, whether it's late next year or soon thereafter, we'll begin looking at the final design of phase 2. Next slide, please. On the sewer side, these first 3 projects on this list are tied directly to the battery plant. And so those are going to take priority as well. So the Carrier Creek Interceptor Sewer, the good thing is we've got a lot of design and planning and whatnot, but we still have to get that thing built this summer. And then likely to be improvements of the lift station and likely a construction of a new equalization basin. So we're working with consultants already, trying to define that, working with GM, trying to make sure we know what all the capacity requirements are. But those 3 projects in any given year would be a pretty big list. And so we're going to utilize consultants to the extent possible and try to keep things rolling, and we'll keep those prioritized, but it could cause other things to, maybe slide a little lower on the list. We'll continue the modeling and capacity analysis as we identify needs, and we're getting close to wrapping up the preliminary design. So I'd like to get that off the plate before we get bogged down with a lot of the other heavy stuff, and so that it's ready to go. Next slide. On the water side, similar story on the water side with GM battery plant, main upgrades to our water distribution system and the GM booster station. It was a reminder that plant's going to use between 1.4 and 1.7 million gallons of water a day, which is right now we're at around 3.8, 3.9 million gallons of water a day. So it's a lot. It's a large water user, and so we'll be focused on what we need to do, hopefully for construction in next year to build.
Ernie, on that subject, I have a question. So right now, the water tower that's out there, is the sole use of that tower is General Motors, am I correct? Or does it hit any of the subdivisions to the west? Do you know? Yeah, I know it's really a Rick question, but.
No, the sole, it's not a sole use. It's the way it's constructed and built. Basically, it's a 1 million gallon tank. GM has access to all 1 million gallons. Our system only has access to the top 500,000 gallons. So if that tank draws down to the halfway point, our system can't access it, but GM will have that volume for fire protection.
So do we have 2 lines going into feeding that tank, or only that tower, or only 1? Why in my mind did I think we have 2 lines feeding that?
We have a line from the north that parallels the freeway and one from the east along Millet. They come together into a single pipe to feed, and then one single pipe that comes out and splits back into 2.
So at this point, do we anticipate another tower or a ground level tank? No.
I'll let you know. Ask me in 2 weeks.
Just curious.
Yeah,
All right.
we just had a meeting this afternoon. It's not clear yet. We're still working on that. We hope to know in a couple of weeks.
I just,
It
when
won't
I
be
look
another,
at,
it will not be another elevated tank, I can tell you
when
that.
I look at how much water that is, it's like, I don't see that capacity in that tank. And I'm not an engineer, but I can do math.
Yeah, and it's not so much the capacity in that tank is our
Ability to
piping
flow.
that gets the water to that tower, and we can push the water to that far. over there right now with our system, our pumps that we've got. The problem is there's not enough pressure left. So that's why we're talking about another booster station to increase the pressure.
Okay, thank you.
I mentioned the well plugging. We hope to get that done and have that loop closed on that. So we have peace of mind that those wells are no longer open to the aquifer. We'll continue with our consultant to work on those easement acquisitions for the St. Joe Highway water main, but that'll be a little bit of a background project. And then unfortunately, at the end of the year, our 5-year water system reliability plan is up for to be redone at Eagle. Every 5 years we have to do that. That's something I'm really proud of, is having that approved the last time. And we've made really tremendous strides on getting the projects that we said we were going to do, getting them done and taking care of our system. So I look forward to looking at what the next 5 years focus needs to be and getting those lined up so we have a plan going forward, because it proves to be invaluable to know where we're headed with this, especially with projects like the GM battery plant. Next slide, please. On our non-motorized side, hopefully we'll get those pathway repairs constructed. Again, the St. Joe project will probably be idling in the background, and if we can get the easements wrapped to a point, we may entertain beginning design with a consultant. And at some point in 22, we'll begin some coordination with the road commission to coordinate our Nixon Road bike lane design. That's a 2023 funded project, so we'll want to make sure that we're talking to the road commission and getting that lined up. Next slide, please. Under parks, again, depending on how the bids come in, hopefully we're building some pathway and or some baseball fields out of Mount Hope. We also did just today issue bid package for the restroom at Delta Mills up on the hill off of Webster Road. That's that renovation of the old well house. That project was really delayed because of the DNR delays in executing the grant paperwork, but got that out today, and that's something we hope to get done. I know it's important to a lot of people to get some restrooms at that facility. And then we still have a couple of 2019 grants hanging out there that we haven't even begun to design with. So we'll coordinate with parks and look at a game plan for maybe getting a consultant on board and maybe starting that in early 23. Next slide. The sheriff's substation, based on your direction last week, confirming the existing site is the preferred site. We're continuing to work with Chris Min and C2A to refine that plan and move through the schematic design. And then we'll be back to give you the information you need to kind of identify the strategy and the schedule for funding that project. Next slide. Kind of the other to-do list. Probably the only one I'd like to really call out is the last one, continuing our GIS updates for water and sewer. That GIS system is a major tool that I use multiple times each day, and it takes a lot of maintenance on our part. Brian was able to authorize some work with a consultant to help us a little bit with the modernization of our system, and I'm looking forward to seeing kind of the improvements they can help us make and help us to continue to keep that as a very viable tool. Next slide. And then just a little note on my staff. I had to give a lot of credit to my staff. Obviously, we had a heavy list of projects, but they're a dedicated, knowledgeable, customer service friendly, very collaborative, both inside and outside our organization. We're a small group, and yet we get a lot done. Probably the biggest news, I've got a couple of long-term staff, and Tim Hogg and Walt Kalasa, both 35 years plus of dedicated work to the township, and they'll be moving on to retirement pastures later this spring. And so it does mean that I'm gonna have to be hiring for a couple positions. And so actually on Friday, we just started that process by posting some positions. And so that's gonna be a major change, and yet, you know, life goes on, and we'll get projects done, and we'll be sure to thank these two for all the work that they put in. I hope to have them back here in front of the township board to give them a little appreciation at the appropriate time. So with that, that's all I've got. I would gladly take any questions.
Great. Folks have questions for Ernie. President LaFonda.
No questions, just kudos. I read through this. It's a lot. And it's been a lot, Ernie, for years. And you continue to row that boat. And you're just an amazing leader. And congratulations to Walt and Tim. I know they'll be greatly missed. And I'm just in awe of all the work. It takes a lot to manage that many projects that are at this level, and you're doing it quite well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ernie? Brian, I do a great job, Ernie. We appreciate everything. But I do recommend as a fundraising effort, we just get a jar, and then anytime an employee or board member calls it a wastewater treatment plant versus a water resources recovery facility, they have to put $1 in.
I'm gonna
I was
pay now.
I was gonna say, I'm kind of, we have to set a date where you can't say both of them, because I find myself saying the wastewater treatment plant, which is now the water resources recovery facility. So, yeah.
I got it for you, W2R2.
There you go.
I like that.
Well, great, Ernie, we appreciate it. We put time into the report. It was great. That concludes our meeting. Any last public comment from the board? Yeah.
I received an email from a constituent and I just wanted to, it was news to me, but I just wanted to bring it up to the board. For those of you who might already know this, it has to do with the pathways in and around Waverly schools. One of them was referred to as the St. Joe pathway, but one of them already has a name in memorial to a student who was killed in a car accident on there. It's called the Jazz Mile. And I was not aware of that, but now I am. I just wanted to bring it up to the board so that if we do any kind of naming of those pathways, that Mall, Ivan, Waverly pathway, that we keep in mind that there is a history there. So.
Thanks. Mary, did you have something?
I just wanted to let the board know that Election Commission did meet immediately before this, so my apologies for making everybody 1 minute late. But we did approve the new precinct lines, election sites and maps. And I'd like to thank, who's sitting in the audience, Patrick Bohawk, who is one of our election chairs and was the brains behind us being able to do this all electronically. He did the initial part, and then Ernie's engineering department and IT finished it off with all of our work with the state. So we were a test site. So far, we're the only one. They found out all the things that they need to be able to do for everybody to submit their precinct boundary changes through GIS, but a tremendous amount of work went into it. And there was tons of work, but it saved the clerk's office from doing 27,000 voters by hand on a piece of paper, which is the traditional way of doing it. You literally went through your voter list and wrote in red ink the changes of their precinct number and all of that. So my appreciation, and we'll be submitting our final required documents to the state, and then it'll be totally official.
Great job.
So thank you, Patrick.
Anything else? Okay, final public comment.
Yes, just two brief comments before I make my main final comment. One,
Thank you for state your name and.
oh, yes, my name is Alana Christ, and I live at 6221 Delta River Drive in Lansing, Michigan, 48906. And I just want to say that it's been a pleasure attending these last few meetings, seeing the annual reports and the functioning of the township. There's a lot of excellent work going on. But with that, it's also a little bit of a shame that I don't know how many of these people are not affiliated or paid by the township, but I do consistently seem to be the only one, except for one gentleman who complained about snow. And that's not entirely the individuals that live in our township's fault. Like, there needs to be more public outreach, because at least tuning in and seeing what the township's doing is something that should be promoted more. Because just seeing not only the projects, but the numbers and the work and the teamwork is something that I think is taken for granted too much. So it's been a pleasure. And thank you to the engineer, to Parks and Rec, and to the whatever division does the property taxes. Those are excellent presentations. I will just briefly say that I do want to work proactively and positively with this board. But I feel like I've been pushed into a realm where I have to use very strong language to get attention, because the way that the things went down starting in June with the commission, all the way up until the decision to sell out our public land to private interest, it is so egregious that I feel like I have to make sure that this board knows that I am serious and I'm not going away. To that end, the ground is thawing, and I'm going to take it upon myself to, although Hawk Meadow Park has been my primary and lead issue, to start getting involved with more issues. And with that, I have this really coincidental good platform, of which I will be putting up a small sign across from the entrance to Hawk Meadow Park that's going to essentially link to a public media, or not public, but a social media campaign, of which I'm starting. It might take me a couple of months, but with that being said, the story I tell about what went down with Hawk Meadow Park, I want to be transparent about it, because right now the story is not going to be very kind. So I want to give an opportunity, an open invite to members of this board, especially those of you who supported this process, to give me your rationale behind the various steps of why you voted for or allowed for the steps to be taken that were taken. Now, of course, I don't need so much explanation for those such as Trustee Bowen and Fedwa, who brought up good points, but then were stonewalled. So why were they stonewalled? Why was legal counsel used to change the deed, et cetera? I don't want to rehash all the questions. You can reach out to me. I've sent emails and I've made public comments, but I just want you to know that that is my intent here, to let you know I am not just a complaining citizen. I am here to engage and to invest and better our community. So thank you very much. And I'll see you at the next meeting.
Any final public comment? Seeing nobody coming forward and seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.
1 hour.